Yo! Welcome to the show, BroMob. We're your hosts, Chad and Brian. Today is Tuesday, September 24th, and man, we had another great week of fantasy football. It's wonderful. So this week we've got week 3 fantasy recaps for you. We've got our genius picks, our dumb picks, and let's just preface this, BroMob. We had a lot of genius picks this week.
Yes, we did.
Between the both of us, we racked them up. We didn't have too many dumb picks out there. Let's just leave it that way. Weekly waiver review, our hold'em picks, and we're also going to throw in there a little bit of extra, BroMob. We're going to talk to you about who you should be trading for this week. So go on, settle yourself on in, get ready for a great show because we got some good information lined up for your brain, for your ears, and for your liking coming up right now.
Yeah, I agree. It was a great week, man. I'm excited. We got a lot to talk about. So I'm guessing, Chad, good week for you. It was a good week for me. I know you pulled a close one out last night against
the former.
Yeah, he's the current reigning defending champion of our league of record.
I put him down.
You put down the champ, which I loved, and
put the dog to sleep.
he beat me in the championship game last year. But I'm gonna be honest, man.
Revenge. I don't even want to hear it.
It's gonna be hard to beat me.
I don't want to hear it.
My team is ridiculous. It is really good.
Dude,
and
you've had back-to-back weeks with New England against Miami and New York Jets, and then you had the blow-up week for Mike Evans this week. I mean, the gods are just feeding it to you. They're like, here you go. Man. Here's all of what you need. Take this.
I look at it like this. I feel like you're making a bunch of excuses. You had, and everyone in our league of record, by the way, if you're listening to this, I'm talking to all of you. You guys all had the same opportunity to draft these guys that I did. The only
I'm pretty angry.
The only guy you couldn't draft was Christian McCaffrey if you didn't have a top 3 pick. Other than that, Mike Evans could have been on your team. You could have had Aaron Jones. You could have had Tyler Lockett. You could have had Mark Andrews. You could have had the Patriots defense. All of these guys you could have
I don't understand.
Decided not to have them.
I don't understand why these guys would allow for Aaron Jones to squeak into the 3rd round, and for a guy who's already got CMC and Mike Evans to grab him angers me beyond belief. I talked to a guy before the draft. I'm like, we can't allow this to happen because, full disclosure, BroMob, I was at the back end of the draft. It's almost every single draft I was in for some reason. Back end of the draft, and you have to prevent the guys at those top 3 picks because they're getting a top 3 elite running back at those positions. You can't give them another solid running back if they go wide receiver in the 2nd round because they just stacked up their team and it's going to be impossible to beat them. And that's what's happened with Brian. He went CMC, Mike Evans, and somehow snatched Aaron Jones in the 3rd round. I mean, shame on everybody. That's the reality. Shame on everybody.
I'll tell you.
There's guys already talking about they want to quit the league. So,
well, look, I am the guy that makes people quit. I get it. I'm pretty dang good, and I understand. I've been in the last 4 years. I've been in a championship game twice, and
nope, we're not going to do this. I'm stopping you.
3-0 to start the season. 3-0 to start the season, and I'm averaging more than 20 points a game, more than the 2nd highest scoring team in the league. So you're welcome, but it was a great week. I know we got a lot to talk about, Chad. I see you're getting frustrated there. So I'll leave you with that, BroMob. Just you keep listening to the advice and the soothing voice that I have, and good things will happen.
I'm sick of it. I can't wait for the weeks that you start ghosting, because those weeks are going to be so much nicer. All right, BroMob.
Speaking of ghosting, I did also rebrand my League of Record team this week. New team name is the Ghostbusters because I make people go so hard that I have to bust them. So I slide my little ghost trap out, and we suck that ghost right into it and take care of it. That way, our rule of thumb in the league is we got room for ghosts. So Ghostbusters, it is.
Brian comes in saying he ain't scared of no ghosts. All right, BroMob, let's move into the show. Be sure to follow along after the show by following us on Twitter and Instagram at FF Bros Podcast, and be sure to search that hashtag BroMob for all kinds of news, funny shenanigans. To see Brian get slapped in the face for a terrible, terrible bet that he had, that's out there right now. yeah, he is bad bet. I don't know why you would think that would actually not happen, but let's get into the show. Fantasy Weekly Recap. All right, BroMob, we start the week off with the Cowboys and Dolphins game, or lack thereof, really. It wasn't really even a game. This Dolphin squad is just terrible. There's nothing good about them. So, I mean, I don't even know if there's anything good I can talk about them, Brian. There's not a wide receiver I want. There's not a running back I want. There's not a tight end I want. I don't even want their defense. I don't know if I want their kicker.
Well, I mean, I get it. Well, I understand. Look, the Dolphins, they stayed close there in the first half, and then the second half, the Cowboys annihilated them. But I think the talk here is that, Zeke hasn't really been his dominant self.
He hasn't.
No, Rusty. It really hasn't. And Dak has been. I think the team has the first 3 games have just really catered to a strong passing game. I think give Zeke time. Their better days are going to be ahead.
You think that that's just indicative of what's coming? I mean, Kellen Moore, new offensive coordinator, you think they're going to be passing it a lot more and Zeke just won't be as involved as he was?
No, I don't, because if you look at the actual amount of rushing that they did in that game, they still ran the ball a lot. And so I don't. I just think it's been the first 3 games have really been positioned to allow Dak to do well. And we'll talk more about this later in the pod.
Yep, absolutely. And if you look at the actual amount of hair that's on your head, you'll count a good number of 0 on there as well. Let's move on. We got Titans and Jaguars. This was one of those Thursday night games have been very exciting this season to start it off. I mean, the Jaguars dominated the Titans. It wasn't a really pleasant game to watch here, but the only thing that I'll say that was pleasant, my goodness, Detective Minshew. Like, he is my favorite player. I mean, after the game, the guy walks out to do an interview drinking a slushie. Like, he doesn't care. Or smoothie. He was drinking a smoothie when he walked out to do his interview. He just doesn't care. He is the epitome of cult classics, folklore, everything that's out there. Gardner Minshew, I love the guy.
Yeah, he is by far my favorite character in the NFL at this moment, and possibly ever. But we can't spend a lot of time on him because I'll talk about him all night. So
yeah, you can make a whole podcast.
Yeah, let's talk about this Jaguars defense. Obviously, still looking pretty dominant. Had a rough week last week, but a good one this week. The Ramsey situation is worth watching. Chad, do you think it affects the defense at all?
I think it'll affect the defense, especially if he doesn't play. I mean, he's a shutdown corner. Nobody can do anything against this guy. If he doesn't play this week, it's a defense to kind of keep your eyes on to say, okay, who are they playing? What's the matchup right there? Outside of that, they're back to being Sacksonville. I mean, they're sacking like crazy. Calais Campbell, nasty. That whole defense looking good again.
Yeah. What do you think about Marcus Mariota? I mean, I feel like it's time to move on. You should have been able to see enough by now. I mean, he's so up and down. He's always been this guy. They're not going to get anywhere with this dude, right?
Yeah, I mean, just keep not getting anywhere, right? Just keep him in there and move on next year. Bring in a quarterback. This next draft is quarterback heavy. Keep it rolling. I mean, there's no reason to bench him right now, right? Because you're not going to get much better with Ryan Tannehill. So just keep him in there. Keep it consistent. It's going to be ugly, but next year the rays of light are there.
Yep. Chad, Bengals Bills. This was a great game actually. I was really shocked. So the Bills were dominating this game for the majority of it. Bengals came back at the end. I was really surprised. I thought they were going to win it. I actually did. I was really closely watching this game, and I thought for a second, I'm like, Bengals got it. They're going to win this game. Bills end up winning. They're 3-0 to start the season. Hey, Gore, solid flex play. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So long as Singletary's out, I like Gore a lot in this offense. I think it caters well to his rushing style. When Singletary comes back, Gore could be making a case for timeshare. I don't know. I mean, Singletary could be a stud, but I think he's more involved in the passing game. Gore, they could be that yin yang, that pound finesse that a lot of offenses are starting to go to. Mm-hmm. John Brown obviously continuing to get high volume in the passing attack. He's clearly the number one on that team. So I really like what I'm seeing out of the Bills for the first time, and I can't even remember when. I actually think Josh Allen has played his butt off this year. I think he's been playing really, really well. So I got to give it to him. I think the team has done a really good job of putting him in position to do the things that he does well and getting away from the things he doesn't do well. Andy Dalton, though, that's a whole nother conversation. So he obviously predictable would struggle against this secondary. John Ross was listed as a bust this week from us and turned out to be
Didn't disappoint.
such. Yeah, did not disappoint. So
he had negative points for most of the game. Just to put it out there, he had a fumble and then finally got some yardage towards the end there that brought him back into the positive. So if you started John Ross, you clearly didn't listen. And if you didn't listen, we're sorry.
Anything other than that that's notable, Chad, that you want to make sure we're looking at here?
Notable here, Joe Mixon was actually used in this game quite well. And he actually put up a good stat line for you this week. The problem with Joe Mixon, I would definitely try to, and this is just me jumping forward on something real quick, sell Joe Mixon now while you can, because his matchups from here on out are just nasty. He plays Baltimore twice. He plays Pittsburgh twice. He goes up against New England. It's just a nasty schedule for him. Try to trade him now while he's high.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chad. Lions-Eagles. This was man, I feel bad for Carson Wentz. I mean, This was a great game. Lions almost gave it away there at the end, but I predicted the Lions would win this game. I thought for sure they would. So it was frustrating to see how many drops the Eagles wideouts had. Obviously, they're leading the league right now in dropped passes, and I think it just speaks to they're hurting for depth. We got 2 injuries there from 2 notable wide receivers. Wentz is obviously getting frustrated. I don't know if you saw the video I posted on our Twitter feed for the podcast, Chad, but there was a play where the offensive line just stopped blocking.
Oh my god! Yeah,
it completely stopped blocking, and the players were like, "Okay." And so Wentz just didn't know what to do. He tried to throw the ball away. It almost looked like it was like a comedy show. Like I couldn't believe it. So. That Wentz has got to get better protection. That guy, he's gonna have a short career if this continues because he can't stay healthy. And they've got a talented back in that backfield though, Chad. Miles Sanders, that guy is explosive. Just got to hang on to the ball. But
he's
other than that, oh, totally, yeah. Other than that, just explosive in the passing game. On the other side of the ball, Carry-On was definitely a bell cow in this game. Couldn't get anything going. Look, the Eagles' defense is good against the run. Let's just put that out there. They always have been, or at least the last few years they have been. And so I didn't expect a big game from Carry-On, but 20 carries in this game from him. That is bell cow status and is exactly what we were excited about when CJ Anderson got released. So, we're going to talk about him in a little bit, but good stuff for Carry-On, even though he had a rough game. Marvin Jones, big game. Kenny Golladay, a little quiet. So, nothing I would worry about there. I think better days ahead.
Yeah, both are really solid wide receivers. All right, let's move into the next game here, the Jets-Patriots game. Patriots just continue to look like a Super Bowl champion team, right? I mean, they have no AB anymore. Doesn't even matter because they don't skip a beat. Philip Dorsett steps in and becomes something relevant on this team. Josh Gordon, of course, getting used deep, had some really nice catches, some really acrobatic plays. And then Julian Edelman getting used quite a bit as well. I mean, Julian Edelman walking away with a chest injury at the end of that game, but it sounded like he's much better and the team's more confident that he's going to play next week. The biggest thing to note here, the Patriots defense is absolutely amazing, man. I mean, you know this because you've had them these last few weeks and they've been going nuts, but they haven't allowed an offensive touchdown yet this season. All the scores have been defensive or they've been field goals against this unit. Incredible. What's not so incredible, Sony Michel has looked really bad. He is struggling. Last week he averaged a little bit over 1 yard a carry, and Belichick you could see was getting visibly frustrated with him and actually pulled him out of the game and was using a lot more Rex Burkhead in the game because of it. If Sony doesn't start to find the hole more often coming up here, you could be seeing him hit the bench real quick because Belichick does not like to deal with that stuff.
Yeah, look, I think Jets defense is Jets defense. So I think better days probably ahead for Sony, but he draws the Bills next week, so it's not like it's going to get any better. That Bills defense is legit as well. The Jets, Chad, look to be hurting without Sam Darnold. I think he's back. It looks like he's probably going to be back after the bye week. I mean, what do you think? what do you think about the Jets really quick? And I know you want to move on, but anything notable we need to be looking at the Jets for?
Without Sam Darnold, Robbie Anderson is pretty much a keep him on your bench and do nothing with him play. I mean, the whole passing game is terrible. You want to start Le'Veon Bell because the guy's getting like 40% to 50% of the offensive share. Right now, it's ridiculous how much he's getting used all around. But the thing is, you might not get hyper efficiency from him because of this, because other than Kerryon Johnson, he's going to start seeing the most stacked boxes in the league. And I say Kerryon Johnson because he faced 60% of his carries were 8 men in the box against Philadelphia. And I see a lot more of that coming up here soon in the next couple of weeks. But the Jets, Le'Veon Bell, he's going to get it to you for volume. You'll get some touchdowns out of it, but it's just not going to be as efficient as you could hope. So that's what I think about this team. Let's move on. We've got Falcons and Colts. The Falcons they can't stop losing their defensive stars, can they, man? Keanu Neal goes down with a torn Achilles, out for the season. It just means teams are going to be able to pass on this team pretty much as well as they were passing against them last year. Keanu Neal is a really good safety, really fast, really can read a play really well. With him being out, they are going to be missing a lot up that middle. And actually, without him last year, what you noticed was teams were able to use running backs who could catch the ball really, really, really well against them. And I expect that to happen again. So if you have running backs like Phillip Lindsay or running backs out there that are like Miles Sanders going up against this defense in the future, they could do very well.
Chad, really quick, just to talk about the Colts a little bit. So, Brissett has had a great start to the season. It's surprised me, to be quite honest. But then I think about it, and maybe we missed something here. He did inherit the same schedule that Andrew Luck was going to roll with, which was an easy cakewalk to start the season. Do you think this continues? Is this something that keeps moving along?
I think it's something that could keep moving along because it was an easy schedule to begin with for the Colts, like all year, not even just the start. Right. What I anticipate to continue, Marlon Mack should keep rolling. This offensive line is legit. And they're going to keep using him. I mean, he has the highest usage rate outside of Dalvin Cook at the running back position in the league right now. I think that's going to change after this week, after we saw Nick Chubb with 100% of the snaps at the running back position. But he's up there. So Marlon Mack should continue to roll. I'm mostly impressed by T.Y. Hilton, man. So T.Y. has always been recognized as this home run type of touchdown player, right? And if he doesn't get the home run touchdown, he's just getting yardage for you. In the first 3 weeks, he's got 4 touchdowns, Brian, and every one of them have come in the red zone. It's crazy. I mean, he's one of the smallest receivers in the league, and he's getting used in the red zone and end zone like he's Julio Jones. I shouldn't say Julio Jones. No one uses him for some reason, but he's the size of Julio Jones. So it's crazy to me.
Yeah, and what's more impressive about T.Y. Hilton so far for me, Chad, is the defenses that he's gone up against. Tennessee allowing the 21st most points to wide receivers for fantasy purposes this year. Yeah, and same thing with Atlanta this week, allowing 32. They're the 23rd worst. I'm sorry. So they're just as bad or just as good as Atlanta is, and he's putting up points. I mean, 12 and a half points. That's a solid stat line for him. The next 2 weeks he draws Oakland and Kansas City, both some of the worst against the pass for wide receivers. So could be juicy matchups for TY moving forward. Speaking of the Oakland Raiders, Chad, we had the Raiders-Vikings this past week, and that was a little bit of I would call it a run-heavy game because it was absolutely that. So
yeah,
Dalvin Cook was literally out after the third quarter, so you had almost 1.5 quarters of the rookie out there. So Dalvin Cook had a great game. Vikings controlled this game from the very beginning, basically. Also, speaking of control, and looks pretty clear that Adam Thielen is in control of that wide receiver 1 spot. I mean, he clearly is the favorite. He's the target guy, and it's created some headaches for a lot of Diggs owners this year who were hoping that Diggs would kind of continue what he was doing last year. But I mean, I think we called it. He was a guy that we were really sketchy on coming into this season. We thought the offensive scheme was going to change dramatically towards the run. It definitely has done that. And that leaves him as kind of the odd man out. So We'll talk a little bit more about Diggs later, but obviously something to be concerned about. Raiders struggled pretty much all around. Look, the Vikings are a tough defense, so Tyrell still getting used in the end zone. That was something that I liked. He's kind of like a guy I'm watching right now. I really like him. I think he's a strong wide receiver 3. He may have upside wide receiver 2 potential. Ravens Chiefs, Chad, this was a great game. I really enjoyed watching this game. Lamar Jackson, although he had a really rough game, I think he's going to be great. It really showed a lot. He had a rushing touchdown in the game, still had a great fantasy week if you were kind of streaming him. Didn't have the weeks that he had prior. But look, the Chiefs are great, and I think the Ravens played them very, very well. I got to tip my hat to John Harbaugh. I think he was bothered by the Chiefs secondary. The Chiefs secondary is actually pretty decent this year, better than last year for sure. Was a little inaccurate. Missed your guy Hollywood Brown on a couple deep plays that could have really changed the game.
Wide open, man. It was wide open. Overthrew him too. How do you overthrow that fast guy? It was so close.
Yeah, so you could tell they were a little shaken in that game, but Ravens played them tough, and I think if they played again, I think it could have went the other way. I think the Ravens could have won that game. So Chiefs obviously continued to absolutely dominate. Pat Mahomes is Pat Mahomes still. Had nearly 400 yards passing in this game against a really, really good Ravens defense. I would love to see these two play again in the playoffs. I think it'd be fun to watch.
It would be really good. I mean, one thing that the Chiefs defense is struggling with is that they cannot stop the run, man. Mark Ingram absolutely gouged them. Lamar Jackson gouged them, and it seems every single week, running backs are just gouging the hell out of this defense. So it's not pretty. If you have a running back going against Kansas City, definitely play them every week. It's a cake matchup.
Yeah, I'm with you, Chad.
All right, Broncos, Packers. The Packers defense continues to be one of the best units in football, one of the top 3 units, to be honest. It's pretty impressive to see. Brian, you called it during the offseason. You've been kind of gloating about it. Congratulations. But what I'll gloat about here is, you know what, Aaron Rodgers, man. I called it. He was a bust. It's a really tough defense. He started the game out well with that long touchdown to MVS, but outside of that, it was pretty quiet for the rest of the game. He should have a big game next week against Philadelphia. I mean, this defense has been allowing everybody to pass against them pretty much willy-nilly. Matt Stafford, though he didn't put up a good fantasy stat line for you, BroMob, he actually had a really good game against the Philadelphia defense. He was very accurate, made a lot of really good plays against them. They were just allowing it all to happen. So Aaron Rodgers, he should have a very solid performance for you next week. If you're kind of feeling iffy about it, don't. Aaron Jones, this is a big notable here. So though he had the 2 touchdown runs, was actually both out-snapped and out-carried by Jamal Williams in this game. This being the week after Matt LaFleur came out and said that, hey, we need to get Jamal Williams more involved in this offense. We need to kind of split the backfield a little bit more. So it's just more of the cram it down your cram hole, LaFleur. It's just ridiculous. What are they doing? This is what got Mike McCarthy fired, man, is the Packers fan base wanting Aaron Jones to play more.
You know what, Chad? What he should be doing is when somebody asks him, what should we do with Aaron Jones? He should look at him and go, turn it up, Maurice. I want to burn.
I want to burn. It's what he's going to do. He's going to burn if he doesn't play. I mean, the team keeps winning, but Aaron Jones, he's too electric. I don't know why he's not playing. 2 touchdowns are nice, but it's worth keeping an eye on, BroMob. At the end of this, Joe Flacco continues to keep this Broncos offense down. I think he's the king of dump-offs, man. That's what he loves to do, is just tiny little dinky dunkies all over the place. But Philip Lindsay loved it. He had his best game of the season so far against a really good defense. Looked explosive, was able to make some really good cuts, and Royce Freeman was actually used in the passing game quite often in this game. So the rushing attack looking good for Broncos.
Yeah, I tweeted during the game my frustrations for the lack of Aaron Jones in this game, and it just irritates me. I mean, I get it. Jamal Adams, geez. Jamal Williams was, he was efficient when he had the ball. But you've got this guy who I mean, is just electric when he gets it. And he's also got to get the ball a little bit. And I just think, I don't know if it was a game planning thing. I know they said they wanted to kind of have it be more of an even split in the backfield this game. Hopefully that was just a game script thing, and next week we're back to the races. Good news was Aaron Jones seems to still be the goal line guy. That's great news for Aaron Jones owners. So,
absolutely. All right, let's move on here. We've got the Panthers-Cardinals game. Panthers looked really good without Cam Newton, didn't they? Kyle Allen out there looked great. 4 touchdown passes in his first game in the NFL. And they've actually come out and said that, hey, Cam's going to stay on the sideline until he's 100%. That means, I don't know, it kind of came off a little, what's the word I'm looking here, Brian? Kind of cryptic, right? I mean, he's going to stay on the sideline until he's 100%. Sounds to me like they're going to keep him there for a while. We understand his foot thing is a big injury risk here, but you know what? His shoulder didn't look too good during the games. Maybe that's going to not keep him at 100% either. So could be seeing a prolonged period on the bench for Cam.
Yeah, here's the thing. I made some mentions about this last night also. Cam Newton is a career 59.5% completion rate passer. He's an average passer. There's nothing special about his passing ability. And as a matter of fact, I think without his scrambling ability, I think he is even worse. So Kyle Allen fit really well. CMC, if you're a CMC owner like myself, you want Kyle Allen in this on this starting offense. Like, you want him in the game. Cam does not look right. And I get it. He's only 30 years old, but Cam came into the league really young, and he's taken a pounding over the years. And these quarterbacks that are, more of a scrambling style quarterback like Cam, I don't care how big you are, you get hit enough, it hurts, and your body takes a beating. Cam's 30 years old. And so for the last 8 seasons, he's been getting beat up and tackled by some of the best linebackers in the league. And at some point, your body's going to say, I'm done. And, I think the team wants him to scramble less, which takes away his advantage. And I really think that makes Cam a below average passer and quarterback. I think he's if I'm an offense, I don't even put him in the top 15. I think he's in the bottom half of the league for me. I would rather have 16 other quarterbacks than Cam Newton on my team. And so I think Kyle Allen has a chance to steal the starting position here. I'm going to say it. I really think Cam is I think this could be the end of Cam Newton with the Panthers. And I think there's a possibility that you could see if I were Carolina and you see what you're seeing with Kyle Allen, he finished the season last year, 2 games, Chad, a 65% passer, 73% passer last night against the Cardinals. I get it. They're a terrible secondary. So let's see how he does this week. If he throws for more than 65% again, that's 4 games. He's thrown 5 touchdowns in three starting games. Cam's thrown 0 in 4 in his last 4. So, I give it one more week, maybe 2. Keep Cam on the sideline, let him get healthy, see what you have to look at. Then do you explore trading him? I think it's time. I
agree. There's definitely some things that keep you worried there with Cam Newton. Let's move on for the sake of time. We've got CMC, of course, huge in this game, fighting Dalvin Cook for the best running back in fantasy football. Greg Olsen, who is, in my eyes, a legitimate top 7 tight end moving forward, so long as he can stay healthy.
You think so?
The guy's going to use a whole bunch, and he's been doing great for you, BroMob.
You think Greg Olsen's going to be a top 7 tight end moving forward?
I do.
What do you think about his injury risk?
I think it's there with every tight end, right? Because tight ends in general are injury risk to begin with. They're going across the middle of the field, getting hit by the biggest players on the defense, linebackers. So they're always going to be at risk for injury. So it's the same with any other player, really. So I think Greg Olsen is a top 7 player at this position moving forward.
I completely disagree with you.
Ooh.
Would you put 5 on that?
Absolutely, I put 5 on that.
That he finishes the season as a top 7, or that from this point going forward he's top 7?
From this point going forward,
I'll put 5 on that. Hard.
I got 5 on it.
All right, 5 on it, dude.
I love it. Awesome.
That's a good bet. All right, let's move it on here.
I agree.
Brian, what we got next?
So the next game, which I almost think this was the game of the week. This was a great game
fun.
too. Giants Buccaneers. Daniel McFly Jones. I don't know why I called him that, but it felt right. In his
McFly.
rookie debut, looking like Eli Manning visually in the face, not looking like Eli Manning in any other way. This guy looked great. He had a great debut. The Giants have to be doing backflips right now. I mean, Giants fans, I mean, I don't know how. This is what you needed to forget about Eli Manning. Like
Devilman is dusting his shoulders off right now. He's like, that's right, everybody. You all talked some mad crap against me. Look what I did now.
Yeah, look, Daniel Jones had himself a game. Boosted the offense. The offense looked better. Really sad part of this game, Chad. Saquon Barkley going down to an injury twice, actually, in the game. Went out once from a hit to the shoulder and head. Came back into the game, and then high ankle sprain. Initial thought was he'd be out 4 to 6 weeks. It turns out it's a severe ankle sprain, and he's likely going to be on the back end of this with close to 6 to 8 weeks being out, 8 being more likely. So, that's a tough break for Barkley and the Giants. It's a tough break for Barkley owners who drafted him most likely number 1 or number 2 overall, Chad. But hey, look, you made a big trade this past week in League of Record, grabbing Evan Ingram.
Yes.
Dude had a game.
Oh, I love it. He saved me. He gave me the win.
Yeah, Sterling Shepard back looked great. Looked like he had great rapport and stuff with Daniel Jones. So could be good there. Golden Tate, I would say here soon. Obviously, probably a must add off the waivers. I would definitely start targeting Golden Tate. That team could use him.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about the Bucs a little bit there, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. So Buccaneers, Jameis, the Tampa Bay Jameis Winstons decided we're gonna change our name to the Tampa Bay Mike Evans. Holy smokes! I told everybody, and we'll talk about this in a bit. But Mike Evans had himself a game. Winston had a game. Finally opened up his eyes a little bit. Great game for Evans. O.J. Howard actually finally woke up, 3 catches for 66 yards. Didn't find the paint, but still had a really great game. And that could have been, maybe they're going to trade him. I don't know. But that could have been a game where they're like, oh, yeah, see, we can – O.J. Howard's still good. See you later. So I don't know. I mean, I think great game for the Bucs, but they fell short in this game.
They lost because their field goal kicker missed it at the last second of the game.
That's what I thought.
It was crazy.
It was. So the Giants pulled it off. But yeah, great game, man. Also, I will say the next game here on this list was kind of a good one. Saints Seahawks. Saints looked really strong even without Breeze. Just a testament to Sean Payton and his game planning abilities. Alvin Kamara was a beast. Michael Thomas targeted heavily in this game.
Oh, yeah.
So Michael Thomas, if you had any worries about Michael Thomas going forward, I would put those to bed. He's going to still be heavily targeted. Like, they didn't pay him all that money to just not get used, right?
Yep.
Russell Wilson showed that he's the superstar that deserved all that money, had a great game.
Oh, yeah.
Disley, Will Disley. Is it Disley or is it Disley? Because I see Disley.
It's Disley.
Yeah, okay, good. Disley, real option.
As you say, Disley.
Yep, I moved on.
Okay, good. Disley.
All right, good. Disney. So anyway, so I'm going to be honest. I was wrong about Mr. Will Disley. He's going to be a legit option at tight end. I think the team really likes him. He's proven a lot of doubters wrong. And so Tyler Lockett getting targeted heavily. Week 1 looks like just an anomaly. He's clearly the wide receiver to own. DK, though, I still think is going to be fine going forward. He was getting shut down by Lattimore in this game. So anything else, Chad, in this game that you want to talk about?
No, you pretty much hit it. Fun game. Chris Carson, however, didn't look too good, so we'll talk about that later. Texans Chargers, to moving on here. The Stat lines wouldn't show it, but the Texans actually struggled offensively for a good portion of this game. Watson had a lot of miraculous plays where he would break through what seemed to be sacks and come out and hit some really big plays, and that definitely skewed his stat line quite a bit there. The thing that I want to pull from all of this, Will Fuller had another dud week, and BroMob, I'm starting to be concerned about it. His production seems to be getting split pretty evenly between him and Kenny Stills. I mentioned this last week that it was a possibility that could happen, and it just continues to happen. It's something to worry about with Will Fuller owners, so just keep that in mind. Something to not worry about, Keenan Allen, absolute rig, as always. Without Hunter Henry there, he's going to be going absolutely bonkers for you going forward. Mike Williams targeted. You know what? Mike Williams hasn't been putting up the stat lines you hope, BroMob, but he's been getting targeted quite heavily towards the red zone very often in a lot of games. He just hasn't been able to capitalize yet. That should start happening more coming soon. So keep him in your line, keep him on your bench until he starts to blow up, and throw him in that lineup again. Steelers 49ers. 49ers rushing attack is for real, man. It's a three-headed monster, but all three of them are really solid backs, to be honest. And they have the roles. Jeffrey Wilson Jr. has 4 touchdowns in 2 games. He's the clear goal line back there. I mean, he's got 4 touchdowns and 8 carries at the goal line, so it's crazy. Raheem Mostert averaging 6.6 a carry, and Matt Breida averaging 5.5 a carry. It's a nasty backfield. I mean, Mike Shanahan's Kyle Shanahan's dad. Kyle Shanahan's offense is just incredible for the running back. It makes stars all over the place. So one player that I'm staying away from altogether, Dante Pettis. He finally found pay dirt, but I mean, still wasn't used much in this game. It's ugly with him. I don't want any part of it. Juju finally broke through. Had a really, really big touchdown in this game, but just understand outside of that, he's actually had a pretty rough game. If he didn't have that big touchdown, he wasn't used quite that much in this game. Their rushing attack has been struggling with James Conner, and you know what? He's got greener pastures ahead. So, all right, let's finish it up with the last game here. We got Rams-Browns. It's frustrating watching the Browns. They have a really, really talented offense, Brian, and I feel like Freddie Kitchens is out there in shotgun every play, and it's becoming really predictable that they're going to be throwing or running the ball. And because of that, it's hurting the fantasy outputs for all of these stars that are on this offense. Nick Chubb, OBJ, Jarvis Landry, and even Baker Mayfield. Defenses are capitalizing all over it. And Baker, you know what, is making some head-scratching decisions as well. Not staying inside the pocket when he should. He's running outside to the right when he shouldn't. It's concerning. They try to be too flashy is really the thing there. So it's killing them. Chubb, the big thing to see here, was used on 100% of his downs. They had him split out wide multiple times, but wasn't used out there, which was weird. It was just, he was a decoy, essentially. So he's pulling a defender away for some other players. So, and one big thing to pull from this game as well, Todd Gurley just isn't the same. We knew this going into it, but you can see it really hurting this offense because without his big rushing game, the play action doesn't work as well. So Jared Goff hurting because of that. Big players that are coming out of this game though: Cooper Kupp, huge game. Brandon Cooks, 112 yards receiving. That combo is nasty. They kind of line them up next to each other inside of packages, and it confuses defense on which one to cover. So impressive for both of those guys.
Quick update. Bears defense just scored a pick 6, so it's 7-0 at this moment.
Case Keenum, bad start. Eh?
Yeah, Keenum not off to a good start. Adrian Peterson just ran the ball for 5 yards, looked like a gorilla.
All right, BroMob, let's move forward.
Genius, genius, genius!
All right, BroMob, as we mentioned before, we made some really, really good picks this week. I'll start off with mine. BroMob, I smartly told you to start Phillip Rivers, 318 yards, 2 touchdowns, 19 fantasy points on the day. Big game for him. Another big game, Marlon Mack, who I also mentioned to start. 16 carries, 74 yards, 15 fantasy points. I mean, he's got the touchdowns. The team is going to use him quite a bit going forward as well, so keep him on your lineups. The stream that I had mentioned, Jason Witten, though it wasn't a big week, he did have 3 catches for 54 yards, 6.9 fantasy points for you. That's kind of what you're looking for a stream. I mean, it's better than the goose egg that O.J. Howard gave you the week before, right? And he wasn't a stream. So anytime you can get points above 5 points, it's a good stream. 2 guys that I told you to sit Jared Goff, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 turnovers. It looked like a good stat line, but 14 fantasy points altogether, BroMob. It wasn't a good week for him. And then finally, Chris Carson. I told you to sit him. I hope you did, because he only had 15 carries for 53 yards, 1 catch for -2 yards, and 3.6 fantasy points, including that fumble. I mean, he's got 3 fumbles in as many weeks this year or so. Luckily, the team has come out and said that they still trust him, but if he keeps doing this, they're not going to trust him for long.
Yeah, Chad, and so my genius picks of the week, man, I don't know, I almost had to write a book. There were so many,
Oh my God.
but I'll start it off with the best one. You're welcome, BroMob, for this one. I told you guys, stay with Mike Evans. 8 catches, 190 yards. That's not a typo. 3 tutties. 41 fantasy points. You're welcome. I also said start Dak Prescott, 246 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and then added a rushing touchdown to it. So 3 total touchdowns on the day, 22.5 fantasy points. Start Devontae Freeman. Wasn't an exciting week. He didn't get into the end zone. It would have been a really great start if that had been the case. But 16 carries, 88 yards, 11 fantasy points. You're welcome. Sit James Conner. I get it. He was a stud last year. I said going into this week, he missed a lot of practice due to that knee. Even if he did play, it was a tough matchup against the Niners. 13 carries, 43 yards rushing, 4 catches for 14, 5.7 fantasy points. Hopefully you listened and sat James Conner. I also said sit Robbie Anderson, who had 3 catches for 11 yards, 2.6 fantasy points. Hopefully you listened to that too. My stream, this was my rock solid, gold plated, diamond crested stream of the week. Packers defense. This was my gift to you after my terrible pick last week. 13 fantasy points from the Packers defense. This defense, Chad, you mentioned it earlier. I did call this. These guys are legit. They've only allowed 16 points. That's the highest amount of points that they've allowed in a week to a opposing offense. So 16 points, tied for last week when they allowed 16. They have 8 turnovers on the year, only rostered in 65.5% of ESPN leagues. BroMob, go get them, grab them, put them on your team. They're going to be legit, and it's their schedule just is going to continue to be catering towards all of these stats. So I think, but good days ahead. Also, sleepers. Look, I nailed these sleepers too. I'm just going to call it, Chad. Daniel Jones and Frank Gore. Wow. I said these guys were sleeper potentials for me. Daniel Jones, 336 yards passing, 2 touchdowns through the air, another 2 touchdowns rushing. He had 34.2 fantasy points on the day. And Frank Gore, the 975-year-old Frank Gore, 14
Frank Goro.
carries. Frank Goro himself, grabbing the entire team and dragging him with him. 14 carries, 76 yards, and a touchdown, 15.9 fantasy points on the day.
I don't know how he's alive after that game. All right, BroMob, though we had a lot of good picks, there were some boneheaded ones. So let's move into our dumb picks.
You blew it!
All right, BroMob. Well, I mistakenly told you to start Titans defense this week. And though I stand by it, because it was a good, I don't care, it was a good matchup. They scored you a hefty goose egg for the week, a nice big 0. Gardner Minshew, Detective Minshew, solved the case of the Titans defense. They were only allowing 5 yards per reception, and he was hitting some big yardage plays to DJ Chark, to Chris Conley, and to everybody, really. I mean, he was doing really good. I also told you to start Marquise Brown, and though, again, I'm standing by it because he had 2 catches for 49 yards, really bad week for fantasy purposes, but he should have had a huge game if Lamar Jackson would have just connected with them on any of those 3 wide open deep balls. It would have been a big game. Don't sweat it with Marquise Brown yet. He has some really big upside for you every week.
Yeah, Chad. So my dumb picks. Look, Will Dissly, I get it. I whiffed on this one. I thought this guy was somebody that just had a great start, was gonna peel back. 6 catches, 62 yards, and a touchdown, 15.2 fantasy points on the day. Only out targeted by Tyler Lockett. I like him, actually. I watched the game a little bit. I had a chance to see him play, and Yeah, my bad, BroMob. So this was one I missed on, and definitely I think he's going to be a serviceable tight end moving forward. Another one that I whiffed on, Brandon Cooks. Called him as a bust this week, or a potential bust. He ended up not being. He was the complete opposite of that, Chad. He had a great week, 8 catches, 112 yards on the day. Didn't find the end zone, almost did, but 16 fantasy points on the day. He had a great game, and so that was another one of my whiffs. So actually, Chad, I had to dig deep on it this week because those were the only 2 that I screwed up on.
Yeah, we did pretty well this week. I'm not going to lie, BroMob. But for these ones, we're sorry. All right, for our waivers this week, a lot of big names out there. Daniel Jones, of course, go get him. He's got a pretty easy schedule moving forward. He's only owned in 14.6% of ESPN leagues, and he's got a good offense around him, actually. Sterling Shepard fits his mold pretty well. Golden Tate's going to be coming back in the next couple weeks here. He's going to be missing Saquon Barkley, but that's okay. He's going to be passing it to Evan Ingram a whole lot. Yes. And some other players. So go pick him up. He's a really good spot play for you if you don't have a top end quarterback.
Yeah, Chad, great choice. I love Daniel Jones moving forward. As a matter of fact, I think I picked him up in our underground league. So guys, you'll hear a lot of Daniel Jones conversation in the league going forward. Deontay Johnson, Deontay Johnson. I don't know why I said that. Deontay Johnson, wide receiver of Pittsburgh Steelers, only owned in 1.8% of ESPN leagues. Look, this is going to be a guy that I think is going to be heavily involved in this offense. You want to go get him. And then tight end Will Dissly of the Seattle Seahawks. Love this guy, owned in 27.3% of ESPN leagues. Again, I will say it time and time again, I was wrong on this dude. So those are 2 guys that I really like moving forward, Chad.
Yeah, Dissly should be a good spot play as well at the tight end position. So play him with matchups to be good. Frank Gore, really good pickup as well, especially if Singletary doesn't play again this coming week. He's only owned in 16.4% of ESPN leagues. Listen, the guy's got 4 arms on him, and he loves to stiff arm people out of their minds. So the only person that can beat him is Johnny Cage. So stay away from him if Johnny Cage is the defense, but otherwise Frank Gore should take care of everybody else. DJ Chark, the Jacksonville Jaguars, seems to be the favorite receiver for Detective Minshew. He's only owned in 41% of ESPN leagues, which is insane to me. The guy has a touchdown in every single game this season. Go pick him up, BroMob, if you haven't. And then I'm going to finish it off here with Mecole Hardman. BroMob, everybody went out and they grabbed Demarcus Robinson because he had the huge week. But Mecole Hardman's going to keep getting more and more involved in this offense going forward because he is the Tyreek Hill clone, and they're going to start using him like Tyreek Hill so long as Hill is out. He's only owned in 44.8% of ESPN leagues, and if you don't got him, you got to go put a waiver bid on him now.
Yeah, I'm with you, Chad. I think those are some great waiver pickups. What about hold'ems? So, players that I think these could be 2 different types of players. I just want a preference. So hold'ems could be guys that really haven't played well yet this year, or they've had back-to-back weeks of really rough games. They could also be players that have played absolutely fantastic, more so than we ever had imagined, and maybe it's time to move away from them or pivot a bit. So, Chad, the first one here on the list, Mike Williams of the LA Chargers. Look at stat lines, haven't been pretty. He's getting used heavily in the red zone, but what do you think? Is he somebody that you would pivot off of at this point? Do you want to stick with him? What do you think?
I'm sticking with him. Listen, like you just said there, he's getting used heavily in the red zone, and eventually those passes are going to start connecting. Last year, he had double-digit touchdowns. It's because he got used in the red zone. He's huge. This guy's an absolute mountain there. Without Hunter Henry, Keenan Allen, of course, going to eat up a lot of passes, but Mike Williams should continue to strive. He'll get some touchdowns for you going forward, BroMob. Don't worry. Another guy we're saying to hold on to, it's going to hurt you, BroMob, but you got to hold on to Saquon Barkley. He's going to be out for up to 8 weeks. It's going to hurt. It's going to look nasty on your bench with all those goose eggs, but listen, when he comes back, you got yourself one of the best running backs, if not the best fantasy running back for your playoff run, so long as you make it. But if you make it, you're possibly beating everybody with Saquon Barkley. Keep him on your team. Don't trade him. Don't drop him. Keep him there. Hold on to that.
Yeah, I would add to this, though, a little bit of a wrinkle. If you're 0-3 to start the season and you have Saquon Barkley right now and you're light at the running back position and you're struggling, and there's somebody that's willing to give you decent compensation for Saquon because they're 3-0 and they're willing to stash him for the season, you might want to consider it because, look, there's no point in keeping Saquon Barkley on your bench for 4 to 8 weeks, probably more 8 weeks, if you're not going to make the playoffs, right? And so consider that too. I would say, look, if you're a team that's 3-0, you can afford to place him on if your league has an IR spot, you can maybe give this team a little something to onboard him. You still have your starters in place, or at least a starting lineup that can get you to the playoffs. He might be somebody you want to trade for. And if you have him in your 0-3, he might be somebody you want to trade away just so that you can be competitive. Because if Saquon was your team right now, you're grasping at straws, right? Yeah. So there's that part too. Jed, I got a question for you. So this is going to pivot a little bit from the guys that are struggling to some guys that are blowing up right now. Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper. So, we were talking a little bit about these guys before the pod started here, Chad, and I'm just asking the question in general. Dak, I think I'm safe to say that Dak Prescott has outperformed everybody's expectations for the first 3 weeks. He's up there right now. I just heard today on ESPN in the conversations with Pat Mahomes as possible MVP candidate. So my question is, look, they played the Giants secondary, they've played the Redskins secondary, and now the Dolphins secondary. They pull the New Orleans Saints secondary next week, Chad. They're in New Orleans. They're the New Orleans Saints have allowed the 5th most points to the quarterback position. So another good week in line for Dak. Then he gets Green Bay and New York Jets. He'll have 2 great games against Philly and New York in week 7 and 9. But then leading into the playoffs, Chad, it does not look pretty for him. He's got the New England Patriots week 12. Then in the fantasy playoffs week 13, he draws the Buffalo Bills, then the Chicago Bears, and the LA Rams. So it's a really tough lineup to finish the season. My question for you, Chad, is it time to sell Dak high?
Absolutely, it's time to sell him high. I mean, he had a great first 3 weeks, and it's going to get harder for him. So go out there and try to trade him high to a team that's struggling, maybe a team that has Aaron Rodgers who hasn't looked too well, and try to give him Dak Prescott and get somebody in return for it. So I would definitely trade him. I would try to move on from him.
All right, and then in that same light, my question is also with Amari Cooper. I'll be honest. I'm the first one that would admit, so far through 3 weeks, I'm wrong about Amari. He has looked great. He's heavily targeted. He's got 4 touchdowns on the season already in 3 games. So, but again, Giants, Redskins, Dolphins. They've got the Saints coming up, 6th most points to the wide receiver position. Do you sell Amari high?
I'm actually going to hold on to Amari. I would sell Dak, but I'm going to hold on to Amari just because I think he gets a really high target share in this offense still. And just because a quarterback isn't doing well doesn't mean a wide receiver is not doing well.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I'm on the other end of that token because you just saw me do that in league of or in the underground league this past week. I traded Amari for Evans, and that was strategic. I've been looking to try to move off Amari since the season started. I'm glad I waited a little bit, but I would say if you can add Amari with somebody else and upgrade to a Mike Evans or one of these elite guys in the top, I would try to maybe upgrade Amari a little bit because again, that playoff lineup is going to be brutal. And if you're looking forward, if you're 3-0 or 2-1, you think you got an easy path to the playoffs, maybe something you want to consider. Chad, Stefon Diggs. So look, low usage so far, very touchdown dependent. We kind of called him. Is it time to move? Time to move off of him?
Yeah, I think it's time to move on. Listen, this offense doesn't have enough passing to go around for 2 wide receivers. That's the end of the conversation right there. We called that one of these wide receivers, Stefon Diggs, and Adam Thielen, one of them would get hurt by this offensive scheme. We said that Adam Thielen is the better fit for it, of course, because he's a more well-rounded receiver, really good route running, good hands, gets used in the slot a whole bunch, so he shouldn't be hurt by it. And Stephon Diggs, of course, being the deep ball threat, would get hurt, and we're seeing this happen right now.
Yeah, and look, when you move off of him, BroMob, you're not dropping him to the waivers. He's too talented for that. Try to trade him. Maybe add him with somebody else. Try to trade him, upgrade, but it might be time to move on. Jared Goff, pretty looks like green pastures ahead. Is this somebody you want to move off of? Do you just say, hey, look, he had a bad week, you keep him?
No, I'm absolutely keeping him. Jared Goff, I mean, he's absolutely surrounded by talent. There's no doubt about it. He's got Sean McVay to call plays as well. Goff, though he looks kind of rusty in the beginning of the season, should definitely improve going forward. And then BroMob, for the sake of time, are to keep moving here. Greg Olsen, back-to-back great weeks. Historically, he's had health issues. Do you trade him away, Brian, or are you holding him?
So I'm trading him. I know you said you think top 10. We got to bet on this now. If I have Greg Olsen, he had back-to-back good weeks. I looked at his schedule. It looks brutal moving forward, I think. So you and I have different opinions here. That's great, but I would trade him. I would try to maybe couple him with somebody else and see if you can't upgrade that position.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold on to the target share. At the tight end position, it's so valuable to me. So I love Greg Olsen. Let's move on, BroMob. We've got our players that we need to be going for trades. Our trades for the season. Number one. This guy couldn't be any cheaper right now. James Conner. If you have Saquon Barkley, who's going to be out, and like Brian said, if you're 0-3, I'd be trying to move him for James Conner because, listen, this guy's as close to free as possible, and he's got a really good lineup of games coming up here. Conner should see much better games going forward. And listen, last week, he was used a lot more than people thought. Jalen Samuels wasn't really used in the game. Benny Snell had very little usage. So James Conner still has the brunt of the workload there, and it could be really good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a little worried about James Conner, but if he's somebody that you're bringing in as your third back or something like that, and you're making a good trade for depth, I think that's a great play. Chad, Kerryon Johnson. Look, here's the deal. The team moved away from C.J. Anderson last week. It released him, and that was a nonverbal way of saying Kerryon's now the guy. They passed the torch to him. He's going to be a bell cow. 20 carries this week against a really tough D. Had a bad matchup. Look, I know I'm with you, Chad. Here, if you don't have Kerryon Johnson on your squad, I would be targeting. He's like Mike Evans was last week. Kerryon Johnson might be my top trade target this week.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I traded for him last week. I saw this coming. He does have tough matchups, and it was definitely going to be a headache for owners out there. So things are going to get much better. He's going to have the bell cow role for this team, which alone is a valuable asset in the running back position in the NFL. So, all right, let's move into our last person to trade for, BroMob, Davante Adams. This is a player that you wouldn't think anyone would want to trade, but after a grueling first 3 weeks of just kind of up and down play and not very good stats, some owners might be willing to move on from him. He was a first-round pick for a lot of people. It could be hurting teams and giving a lot of people that coveted L that they don't want. So Davante Adams, go ahead and try to get him. This is about as low as you're going to get him for, because next week they're going up against Philly. He's going to have a huge game, and those owners are going to be, he's back. His value is all the way back up. So if you want to trade for him right now. This is the time.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. His playoff schedule is cake other than the championship game. He's got week 12 the 49ers, then week 13 Giants, week 14 Redskins. So the week 15 against the Bears, that's tough. But yeah, he's somebody that could literally get you to the championship game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, BroMob. Well, that's going to do it for this week's show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday and Wednesday to stay up to date on the fantasy football world and to gather any insights on how to dominate your fantasy football league.
Yeah, BroMob, and make sure you get over to keytothetitle.com. Every week we put our start, sits, sleepers, busts, our streaming recommendations, We'll have weather reports, all kinds of stuff. So keytothetitle.com is a free website that we run. Create a profile completely for free, keytothetitle.com. Get over there.
If you're not on Apple Podcast, we're also on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcast, or wherever it is that you listen. You can find us everywhere. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FF Bros Podcast, and be sure to check out our website, thefantasyfootballbros.com, for all kinds of articles, rankings, and just so much more, BroMob. See you tomorrow.
Bye.